3, 2, 1.
Well, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. As Goose and I were getting ready to sit down and start recording a podcast, we started talking about how the week's been going, how the day, all that's been going on. And Goose basically came up with a conversation piece for us today. So this is what we're going to be talking about. Rhythms of the week. We're going to be talking about the rhythms of the week. Really, we'll focus, as we typically do, on metaverse type stuff. But Goose, the reason why we're even making this topic is because you said that you want to talk about why you're an advocate for Thursday night services, because we at Lakeland, as of right now, we're trial running a 7-week Thursday night service. I feel like I said that wrong. We're trying for 7 weeks a Thursday night service to see how that goes. That's when you said, I'm an advocate for that. So let's talk about rhythms of the week.
I love every bit of that. First, I love that you're doing it as you've defined a 7-week. I know call it a trial run, but for 7 weeks you're going to do it, and then evaluate it at the end of the 7 weeks and see if you want to continue. Love that. I mean, that right there is like, to me, a perfect way to kick the tires on something and be innovative, because there is just this such a heightened standard with church, and maybe there shouldn't be, but where trying things and failing in the business world, it's just like, yeah, go for it, try it, fail quick, iterate. That's the way you progress. That's where you learn. Mm-hmm. But somewhere along the way in the church, it was like, no, if something fails, it's catastrophic. And, and then we just we just box it all up and never talk about it again, as opposed to like, that didn't work, but like, let's talk about why and innovate. But so working within that framework, the 7-week, let's see what happens. It's like, there's no failure no matter what. Like, we did it and it's great. And I love that. But I love the Thursday night service idea. I have long been an advocate for that, but I'm curious, from your perspective, what you can share, why for you guys the Thursday service?
So for the most part, from what I gathered, and I'll try to regurgitate the best I can. So we had a Saturday night service when I first got here to Lakeland, so pre-COVID. But for the most part, like, we are a vacation spot. So come summertime, like, we're right around the lake. We got tons of lakes around us. So come warmer weather, like, that's what people are doing with their weekends. They're out doing something, which is not unique of an idea to me coming from Colorado. Like, and when I was living in Colorado, the church world, we battle with, there's the church that people go to on Sunday, and then there's the church that out in the mountains that the people go to on Sunday as well, whether that's the ski slopes during the wintertime or out hiking during the warmer months. Like, just being outdoorsy and doing something is pretty much the way of life for Colorado. Being in a vacation spot here in Lake Geneva, the same is true. Like, come the warmer months, people are out on their boats, they're out on the water, doing all that kind of stuff. So we're obviously here in the middle of springtime. We're inching closer to warmer months. Like, it's actually been uniquely warm for us here. We've had 80-degree weather the past couple of days, so take that in your pool. So we're like, let's try a Thursday. People work on the weekends as well as they work during the work weeks, and let's just give it a shot. Let's see if just disrupting the typical rhythm and flow of Saturday, Sunday services. Yeah. Let's stay away from the Saturday, because we already know what that looks like, but let's see what happens if we threw in a midweek one. Yeah. And what just made the most sense was, let's try Thursday. And again, we'll do it for 7 weeks. And then the way that this is scheduled out, by the time that we hit that 7th week point, we enter into Memorial Day weekend.
Right.
Heading into the warm months. So then we'll put a pause to it. We'll evaluate how did those 7 weeks go, because again, it's just the season of the calendar. People are gone. They're out on vacation. They're away during the summer months. And then if it went well, either way, come fall, we're going to bring in a third service. I don't know that I was supposed to say that. Either way, we'll see what happens. But come fall, come fall, there could be a Saturday, Thursday service, just depending on how well it goes. But yeah, it's try and see what happens.
So that's again, being in Florida, same idea. So many people are going boating on the weekend. So many people are going, somewhere to their beach house. But we experienced the same exact discussion. We never actually pulled the trigger on the Thursday service, but we had a lot of discussions about it. Other churches who had done it, and so all of what you said, we'd sort of like work through. But I just thought it made a lot of sense. But the other side of it is, and obviously Lakeland and I never really bought into this either, which was, but now they should just be here for Sunday. Like Sunday's the day, and that's the day it should be, and like don't cater to the people who want to go away on the weekends. And so that's the kind of, and I'm wondering if that was any sort of like pushback on your guys' side. Was that at all on the table at all?
I mean, it was part of the conversation, just really what would make the most sense. So
yeah,
I wouldn't
gotcha.
say pushback. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's great, man. I hope you see a lot of, I hope you see a lot of fruit from that. I think it's great.
Yeah. And I think you said it best. Like, you said it's the trial running, it's the innovativeness of just doing something different. I know like, Life Church out in Oklahoma, they run a Monday service.
Yeah.
In order to reach people that they're not going to reach on the weekends. And if we were to tie just this conversation back into like VR ministry, metaverse ministry as a whole, like I just had a team meeting on Tuesday with my team. And I asked them point blank, I was like, hey, what do you guys think that we do really well as a VR ministry? And probably all of them said that we're just not afraid to try something. Like we'll try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul. And I think that's just a little bit of really what, to your point, the capital C church kind of misses out on a lot is just the willingness to try.
Yeah.
We allow established rhythms to become sacred cows that we're not willing to move away from. And what ends up happening is we actually alienate a lot of people that we're called to reach in the process of it. But doing VR ministry, and metaverse ministry as a whole, like that's kind of the name of the game is innovativeness, right? The name of the game is to try things and see if it works. If it doesn't, then cut bait and try again some other way. Even part of our meeting this past Tuesday when we were having that conversation, the whole reason why we were having it was because we just got done with Easter weekend. And what I had been noticing, and I've been hearing it from my team, is there just seems to be a lot of confusion since like the shutting down of alt space on like what are we doing? Some of them are like even saying, hey, what's my role? What's my purpose on this team? Because we had a system in place for alt space. Right. Yeah. And then when alt space shut down, we figured out like we were going to pivot to big screen because big screen is huge on the streaming, the broadcasting side of things. Like that's what they're known for. And then spatial got introduced to us. And in the process of spatial getting introduced, what felt like to me was going to be an apple to apple comparison. Now that we've been doing this for a little bit, I'm realizing, okay, it's not necessarily apples to apples. There's some things that we're having to figure out when it comes to spatial that we can't just run things the way that we did in alt space. But the other tricky part of it was I felt like as the ministry lead, that this was the perfect time to diversify and multiply into multiple platforms. Like if we could do Lakeland in spatial and if we could do Lakeland in big screen, why not split up the team and do that? And I originally thought that we would have more reach that way. And after Easter Sunday, I was like, I actually think that we're hurting ourselves by diversifying this quickly.
Really?
I think that there's such a thing as critical mass. And when you've got 7 team members and you've split them up, so you've got 4 and 3 on different platforms, if you even have that, because I use 2 of them to be here on property to help people try on headsets and experience our VR campus. So in some cases, this is like 2 and 1 per platform. And we've just killed a critical mass. And when other people are looking for something to be a part of in those platforms, if you only see 1 person in there or 2 people, it doesn't seem as enticing. So people just don't show up. And
Yep.
that's what we were talking about. Is like, we need to get back to the critical mass. Let's unify the team. Let's make sure that what we are doing, whether that's in big screen or spatial, we're doing well. And it might be that we still do both, but one is one day and one is another day. Hello, Sunday, Thursday kind of combination.
Yeah.
But let's do it as a team. Let's do it well in order to advance God's kingdom. So it's just kind of the name of the game for innovation in VR ministry, which really speaks to just this topic of rhythm of the week. Like, I don't know. For me, I don't necessarily know that there is a rhythm for
Yeah.
VR ministry. I think you need to create one. So people they know, oh, Lakeland or Cornerstone or Oasis or OCC or whatever. I know that they're going to be here on this platform at this time, but we don't have to uphold to the sacred cow of Sunday. Is basically what I'm saying.
So yeah, and man, even just what we talked about with trying things, see if it works, and if it does, great. If it doesn't, you adjust. I mean, that's what you did. You tried two platforms. It's not ideal, so you're adjusting. You're like, okay, great, no problem. We learned something. Moving on. That's a great example of that. And it's like that's not a loss. That's you got more information than you did before, and so that's awesome, man. As far as the rhythm goes, I'm with you. I don't know that there is, because I think there's two things. One, I don't know that we've been in long enough to really establish it or see one established. And I don't even know that there is one. I think people come and go, and certainly there are some nights maybe that are more popular than others, but we're also in the stage where we're not dealing with enough people for a rhythm to necessarily matter, because like right now, 20, 30 people in there is like, that's plenty. And there's always at least something like that. Like, if you're really gonna like promote something, if you've got, enough of a following, it's just kind of like, well, yeah, you've got that. And so it's not that kind of thing where the scale is so large. I think. I mean, I'm hypothesizing here, where the scale is so large that one day or the next is really going to make a massive difference. I do think, from what you've said, that you create your own rhythm. I know at least for Cornerstone, I know we've got our Sunday rhythm. We've got people that are faithful attenders. They show up. They know where we're going to be, and they're used to that. So I agree that in one sense you kind of create the rhythm, but again, to your point, I don't think it has to be on a Sunday. Mm-hmm. And I've thought many times, we've talked about it many times, does it make sense to go to a different day? Right now, it makes sense for us to stay in the metaverse on Sunday, more from a momentum standpoint, but also just from a resource standpoint, because that's the day that the preacher preaches. And so if I'm up, or Pastor Jason, who does most of the sermons, he knows, hey, I'm preaching Sunday, and yes, it's 4, and I knock them all out, and that's it. And it's not, hey, I got to get up to preach on this day or that day, and then up again on a Sunday or whatever it may be. So, so I think for us, that's what has kept us on Sunday. But I do think that there are so many opportunities out there on other days that, I'm excited to explore that, and that really just comes from a manpower standpoint.
Yeah, let me ask you: have you guys done this over there at Cornerstone? Because we briefly ventured into investigating this in our team meeting. We pulled up, I don't even remember the website off the top of my head, but there's a website out there that basically tracks, like, you could plug in like different games, different platforms, and it tracks the user status and like peak users and whatnot. And we hopped into that during our meeting just to see what's the peak user and base and all that for big screen. They didn't have it for spatial. But the thing that we were talking about is like, so if we were to bring in a second service, right? Like let's say that we do a Lakeland service on Sunday. Maybe it's just a rebroadcast of our 9 a.m. service that we rebroadcast at our 10:30 time slot. And we just do things a little bit different than what we have been. But if we were to do something at a different day or a different time, what would be that day and time? Well, the one thing that caught our interest, and I actually mentioned you guys to the team, that for Central Time where we're at, your guys' service on Sunday is at 3:30 our time. So
On
that's 1:30
on
West.
Sunday we do for you guys it would be 3 and 5. So 3 o'clock in Horizon, 5 o'clock in VR Chat.
Okay.
For me, it's 4 and 6.
Yeah. Okay. So what I picked, so I mentioned that to the team, and as we were hopping onto this site and looking at the user stats and everything, the thing that kind of validated even what you guys are doing, if we were to do the same thing, right, in big screen, was big screen's peak users were at like the 3 p.m. time frame.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Which threw us off. It threw us off. We figured nighttime users would probably be the peak time.
Yeah.
Granted, there were a lot of users at night, but the peak time frame was 3 o'clock. It was like really between that 12 and 6, but like the point was in the middle, so I'm calling it 3. And yeah, it threw us off. We're like, man, that kind of validates what Cornerstone's doing. If you guys were in if you were in big screen, but we were just like, man, so maybe we do kind of start looking at that direction. I don't know that we necessarily have the manpower to do that based off of everybody's work schedule if we did it in the middle of the week kind of thing. But have you guys ever done that? Like, as you talk about it, like, have you guys ever thought about, or have you looked at user stats per platform to kind of say, when should we be there?
Yeah. For VR Chat is the one that we're most focused on right now as far as that goes, and we had taken a look at Altspace, but the numbers were so low it was hard to really get a gauge. Yeah. But for VR Chat, it didn't totally seem like it mattered unless we wanted to talk about something late night, and that was kind of the. It was we talked about, hey, maybe we move it earlier, maybe we move it later, especially with Altspace shutting down. It was a moment where I said, look, if we want to make a change at all, now is the time to do it. There's so much in flux right now. People are, I think it would just be the right time if we wanted to switch things up. And ultimately, we just looked at all of those stats, and I said, unless we want to have a midnight Eastern time service on a night, like where we're at still makes the most sense. And so we ended up just staying where we were. And so, yeah, I would say it's really fortuitous because the time slots really were designed to work around the live preaching schedule, the local church schedule, and just give that time frame. But it kind of worked out that is a pretty good time. There are those, there's pretty good traffic at that time.
It's weird, right? Because like when you're talking about that time frame, when I was talking about it with my team, what made sense to me was that's probably when Cornerstone, Yuba City is finishing up, or at least right after lunch after their last service. So it gives whoever's teaching that weekend the opportunity to kind of ramp down, refuel to get ready to ramp back up. But then you go all the way to East Coast, like where you're at, and you're now talking about 4 p.m. So you're like, okay, we'll finish this off just before dinner time. And then you get all those middle time zones in between. And it's like, this is the afternoon lull. What am I going to do at this time anyways? Lunch is already done. Kids are napping. I was like, it really kind of makes sense for it to be that time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, and again, this is just purely having the people to be able to accommodate these times. But the next thing I would love to try is like a midweek, midnight East Coast service, like that time. That seems to be just where there's a spike. And, the time that we got right now, it's like, it's not super friendly to the UK, but at least some people are still on because it's about midnight for them. Yeah. And so that's why I think there's that combination of pretty good for US time, pretty good for UK. And that's why that, like, again, I'll use East Coast time, but that like 6 p.m. window, the 4 to 6 window is pretty good. But I'm so curious to see what it would be like to run a service from, basically midnight to 2 a.m. East Coast time and see what that would be like. But that's none of us currently have the bandwidth to be able to do that. But that's my net. That's on my list. That's like that. That's one of my sort of wish lists.
Yeah. Yeah. I've started talking with one of my team members about that because he's in the UK.
Yeah.
And, with all the different events that we were running in alt space, our groups and whatnot, he was trying to really figure out like, how does he serve? Like he hopped onto our team call. It was 1:00 in the morning for him and he still hopped onto our team call. But he and I have processed a couple of different times, like, hey, is your way of really being a part of this team or you launching a Lakeland VR service for our European friends at a time that makes the most sense?
Yeah.
And then you and I just collab with each other on what that looks like and whatnot. So that's where we're at with that. Knowing that we do have some UK and European people that are attending, is like, oh, let's try to make this make sense for them rather than, if we get them, we get them. Because when we're running like Sunday morning, we get them, right? Because it's still early enough in the day. Yeah, there's UK is 6 hours ahead of us here. So 9:00 in the morning puts it like 3 p.m. Again, there it is, the 3 p.m. time frame, they're popping in there, but that's kind of what we've looked at with that.
So do you think you'll get this? And this, I had this thought when we first started talking about it, because my first thought was, oh man, with your Thursday service, I wonder if you would be able to tap some of those people to come into VR because they've already attended the service, and so attend one, serve one. But it's like, hey, you've already attended. You're going to be home on the weekend, presumably. But then it's like, well, actually, if they're attending Thursday, it's the idea is, like you said, they're probably going to be gone. They're probably not going to be home. They'll be skiing the slopes or out on a boat or something. But I wonder though. I wonder if there might be a few people there that just prefer that time slot and then are still around. Mm-hmm. Might be a way to get some local church people into VR.
Yeah, 100%. And that's part of the reason why, like, I'll be here on these Thursday nights. Like, we're not streaming these services at all. So there's no Lakeland digital expression taking place on a Thursday. But I'm still here as the ministry representative, the ministry leader, just for the idea of like, hey, you came to service now. Would you potentially want to try on a headset and serve within the VR ministry on Sunday morning, since you've already heard the message? And even our approach, like as we talked about, like some of the transitioning that we're doing with our services and our time slots and everything was, one thing that we're playing with is, do we do our 9:00 as a meet and greet time slot instead? So we know what the message is going to be about. I have the outline. So do I then create topic discussions based off of what the message is going to be for the full first hour and a half, 2 hours before we actually live stream the service in? Because one of the issues that we're having with Spatial right now is the actual teaching aspect of the live stream is clear. It gets a little wonky here and there, but when we try to do worship in there, it is awful. The download upload speed, it's compressing, it's falling apart. It just doesn't keep up with the music side of it so well. So we're like, if it's not going to be good, is there something better that we could do? And that's where I was like, man, if people are looking for community and virtual reality, is this where we set up the first half to be meet and greet, conversation? Hey, if you like the topic that we're talking about, our pastor today for service is going to take this further. Wow. So stick around, and you can stick around and attend the service. And then if you want to talk more afterwards, we'll be here. So that's kind of like the direction that we're thinking about taking that.
That is phenomenal. So in essence, do the Q&A beforehand, but like kind of tease the sermon.
Yep.
Oh man, that's a good idea. I can't wait to see how that works out. Yeah. You got to keep reporting back on that. I am very interested to see how that goes. I love that again, it's there's this like, I don't say give and take, more like a push and pull of what works and what doesn't. And some, I mean, even from week to week, it might seem, oh, this worked out really well. And then another week we do the same thing. And it's like, yeah, that didn't feel right. But there was a little while where we were spending quite a bit of time before service talking with each other. And it was great because it just, from a community standpoint, it was just, that's what people, I recognize that because we would have our service order and our timing, and it's like, I'm up there like trying to do announcements, and like, there's like 30 people outside not coming in. They're just still having conversations with each other. And I'm up there like trying to say like, hey, we're getting started, and nobody wants to get started. They want to talk to each other. And so and part of me, I'm like, that's awesome. That's great. That's what a church should be. And so why not just lean into that and let's hang out for a little while? Then, of course, we're running, past like 6 o'clock with the sermon and the Q&A, and just like, yeah, we can't do that either. Let's chat after. And so trying to like thread the needle on that part of it. But I love that you guys are trying that. And for us, it was far less structured. I love the idea of trying to lead off with that, sort of, yeah, we're hanging out, but there's something to think about. And if you think that's interesting, then yeah, that's so good, man. Well done. Yeah.
Well, and what's even like for me with Spatial right now, and you and I've talked about this, you guys did a great job of doing this in VR chat for your Good Friday service. But the way that Spatial is set up with just uploading artwork because it's art gallery format. Yeah. Dude. So I did this for Good Friday and Easter for us. So I went to a AI art generator, and I just did Good Friday, Passion Week themes, and I just asked for it to be done in watercolor painting. So cool. I got like 8 to 10 of those, right? And so I posted them up in the frames that are there in Spatial for artwork to go into. And then Saturday rolled around, our first of our 3 Easter services. And as I'm sitting in this room getting ready for service, it just kind of dawned upon me. I was like, the YouVersion Bible app does a really good job of creating artwork for scripture. I wonder if I could just download one of those.
Wow.
And upload it into the framework. And so I strategically did it along the lines of what our senior pastor's message was. So whatever scripture references he was using, I just walked in, grabbed those, and sure enough, uploaded it right into the Spatial art frames. And so all of a sudden, I have one side of the room that's talking all Passion Week and artwork. And then on the other side, it's all of our senior pastor's message, basically in artwork and word text that's on that artwork, all talking about Easter, Good Friday, Easter as a whole. And for me, I was like, dude, anybody can now walk into this environment and be presented the gospel without ever having to talk to somebody, because this environment's now live 24/7.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about a discussion with somebody pre-service starting, just go look at the artwork, and that's part of the discussion.
I love it.
It's a whole new way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that again, you saw for our Good Friday as well. That's kind of the idea for that entire area, and that is, I mean, that's leaning into the strengths of VR, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is one of the things that you and I've talked about quite a bit, is just the solo, single player experience, if you will, that if someone were to walk in, could they experience the gospel in some way? And so, that's cool. The AI art, man, like that. So that's what we did. That's what we did for our Good Friday service. Everything was in there. Did you make it to the end? I know you had some disconnect. You had a disconnection problem.
I got booted.
Had you seen? I can't remember if we had walked through that though. So you did. Did you make it at all? Have you seen the final piece of art?
I saw the final. Yeah, I made it to the very top.
You did. All right. So you saw the big concrete wall. Yeah. Yep. Did you recognize that art style?
So this is what I would call that art style, and it's probably not accurate whatsoever. I would call that punk rockers coming out of oppression, graffitiing a white brick wall in like Eastern Europe.
That's not like totally off base. It was Banksy. It was in the style of Banksy.
Yes. Okay.
And so, like, I don't know if that's exactly it, but it's not that far off. Like, it's not totally wrong. That to me was the most fun out of everything. And I will say, we had one of our people, her name's Minnie, and she did quite a bit of the art in there. I did some of it. She did, and I said this at the beginning, and I meant it. It was like, any of the pieces in there that were good, those were hers. Anything else that was pretty weak, those were mine. But anyway, out of all of them, my favorites were the Banksy, and then Jesus appearing to the disciples in Vaporwave. That was the second to last one. And I look at that and it just looks to me, it looks super cool. And I just love that we've got at our fingertips the ability to mesh these types of things, because, I love Renaissance art. It's just beautiful and impressive, but like not every picture of like the Bible has to be like Renaissance,
Yeah.
So I love that you did watercolors. That's great. And for the crosses, it almost looked like a child drew it. And it was like very simple in that sense. So I love the creativity that's available through that. And at first, when I heard about AI art, I was like, "Come on!" Like I was like, "No, that's not real art." And it's, in a sense, it's not. It feels weird when somebody walks in and they're like, "Oh, this is cool art." And I'm like, "Yeah, I did that one." I didn't do anything. I typed in a prompt. So, but somebody did it. Like I typed the prompt in. That's what that means. But I think there is a place for it, and I think it's I don't know. I had a lot of fun with that. It was cool.
Yeah. So as we bring this episode to a close, it's just funny because here we are talking about rhythms of the week. And we're really talking about how there really is no such thing as a rhythm for the week when it comes to like metaverse ministry. There is of what you make of it. I think what a lot of people who are thinking about diving into this style of ministry need to know and hear is like, dude, the restrictions are off. The handcuffs are off. Go be innovative. Go do what you feel the Spirit is leading you to do in order to reach people. And I think like what's just beautiful about that is no one of us are going to do it exactly the same. There might be elements that are familiar to one another, but at the end of the day, the way that it's relayed, conversed about, how it's done, whatever, it's just not the same. And that's going to speak to somebody that Cornerstone's not reaching, that Lakeland's not reaching, that any of the other VR churches aren't currently reaching. And that's the point of like the bride coming together in order to just advance the kingdom all over the place. So yeah, like the beauty of it is that there is no rhythm of the week. But that being said, you also have to create your rhythm so people can find you and you can be the hands and feet of Jesus to the community that God is bringing you in the metaverse. Because if they can't find you because you're not being consistent, you're not creating a rhythm, then you're just really not being impactful in the process. You're probably causing more chaos and confusion. So,
yeah, well put.
You got anything else to add?
Oh man, you said it all.
No, we said it all. This is a team thing, Goose. All right. Well, that being said, we'll call this one to a close on the Metaverse Church Ministry Metaverse Church Ministry. I have no idea where that one came from. The Metaverse Church podcast. Again, as always, if you would please subscribe, share, rate, and review. All that helps get this out to more people. I will say this, Goose. I think one thing that's really exciting to me right now is I'm hearing and seeing more and more churches excited about the idea of metaverse ministry. They're just asking the question, what does this mean for us and how do we get into it? And that's all coming on the heels of a conversation that I even had with a guy this past week on Discord. He asked me, he's like, hey, since all space shut down, have you seen any more churches hopping into the metaverse space right now? And I told him, I was like, first of all, great question. Second of all, I haven't even had my radar up on that yet. But now that you ask, I would say I haven't seen any new churches hopping in. But I think that there's a wave coming. And I'm pretty excited about that. And I'm sure you and I will eventually talk about that one as well. But yeah, I'm just excited about that. So that being said, you do all those things, share, subscribe, rate, review. That gets us out to more people so they can find it. Please hop into our Discord. The links for that will be in the show notes as well. If you want to connect with us, metaversechurchpodcast@gmail.com. Best way to reach out to us are on either one of those two platforms. But for Goose and myself, we will see you next week for another episode. Until then, be blessed.